Hi folks, I'm Spencer, and on today's episode of Cult Mania we're taking a look at the only sequel John Carpenter ever made, Escape from LA, now in 4K. Woo! Now, I'm going to put my cards on the table. Escape from New York is easily one of my favourite Carpenter films, probably one of my favourite sort of sci-fi action films out there. Especially because I love Kurt Russell, he's one of my favourite actors, I'd watch him in pretty much anything, I'm not going to say anything. So, Escape from LA has a lot to live up to, and I saw it quite a few years ago on the Horror Channel, I think I taped it off the Horror Channel, and was massively disappointed. And hadn't seen it since, and thought, I need to go back and watch that again. And then they put it out in 4K, and despite going, why the frick would anyone want to own Escape from LA in 4K? This idiot did, and yeah, got thoughts. So the plot of Escape from LA is very, very similar to the plot of Escape from New York, in that pretty much it's the same. It starts out, you get this sort of backstory thing, similar to in Escape from New York, in that we're told that a massive earthquake hit LA, which turned it into an island. Then there was this sort of super right-wing Christian government that took over America, and they turned sort of LA, island, into a place where they send all the sort of degenerates, all the criminals, all the people who aren't Christian, all the gays, I presume. You know what I mean. Probably the sort of thing Trump would like to have done. Anyway, then you have the thing that happens in the first one, in that someone connected to the president, not the president this time, it's his daughter, and a MacGuffin thing end up in LA. Snake Plissken has been sort of arrested, wearing exactly the same clothes that he left Escape from New York in, and he's sort of told, right, go in, we've given you poison stuff instead of exploding stuff, you need to go in, you need to go and get the stuff back, you need to get back out, blah 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 blah. This time instead of flying in, he goes in a submarine, and then when he gets in there, there's a bunch of gangs, there's a bad bastard person who wants to escape, they're going to break through the wall or whatever. He's literally the same plot.
Your rules are really beginning to annoy me.
Now, despite the fact that it is very much riffing off exactly the same plot line as the original film, there is enough to differentiate it. I mean, for starters, this is a much more over-the-top film. This is, whereas the last film had a very low budget, it was very much about atmosphere. The action sequences are fine, but they're nothing absolutely spectacular. I think a modern audience would be very disappointed by the action in that. It's much more overcranked, you've got motorbike chases, there's the over-the-top surfing bit, there's paragliding shootouts, there's much more action-y stuff. And that works very well. Kurt Russell's performance is very much in line with that. It's a much more sort of action movie hero. He's much less like the sort of grumpy, tough guy. Well, he's still exactly the same thing, but it's much more overcranked. The sort of gruffness is so much more intense. The doesn't give a shit aspect of his character is played up much, much more. And, the film starts out very much playing up the Western aspect. John Carpenter has always said how much he loves, John Ford films and stuff like that. And it feels very much like that's what we're in for to start with. But then that sort of fades away as the storyline becomes much more episodic, much more, here is a group of characters that we'll spend sort of 10 minutes with and then we'll never see again. Which, from a sort of writing standpoint, is a bit clumsy and a bit clunky, but actually sort of means that the film clocks along at a pretty excellent pace, to be honest, and means that you're bouncing between action sequences or weird characters. There's a very sort of Warriors vibe. I mean, imagery-wise, but also in that you're just sort of going between the gangs, like you would in the Warriors. And a massive part of this plays into the fact that the cast of this film is pretty good. I mean, obviously you've got Kurt Russell coming back doing the role. You've got Steve Buscemi and Peter Fonda in terms of big names. You've got, in exploitation terms, Pam Grier and Bruce Campbell, which, you know, is just one of those things that you go, how can you mess up when you've got these names in it? And I mean, Steve Buscemi turns up quite a lot throughout, but a lot of these characters, you know, were probably available for a couple of days, and in sort of giving them big scenes that's all they do, works very, very nicely.
We ran a psycho profile on him using a database of 5 million sociopathic personalities. He hit the bottom of the curve.
Catches on quick, doesn't she?
No, actually, the film looks a lot nicer than I remember it doing, probably in part because this is an absolutely gorgeous 4K release. They've made the film look incredible. I mean, it being towards the end of people shooting a lot on film has very much helped, because it looks, you know, it was obviously in pristine condition when they scanned it. A lot of the film takes place at night, and when I saw it in standard definition off the telly, that was a problem because it was so dark and I couldn't see a thing. Whereas now the HDR support has meant that you can, you know, the film looks lovely and is never ever too dark, but is caked in atmosphere. There's a lot of fire in the film as well, and that always just looks lovely through H. John Carpenter really knows how to shoot fire and explosions. I mean, the explosion at the end of The Thing is one of the best on-screen explosions, so the guy knows what he's doing. There is a much more sort of post-apocalyptic look to Escape from LA. You know, the idea of the earthquake has allowed them to sort of just wreck shit, basically. And there is very much a sort of post-Mad Max look to a lot of the characters. And like I said, there's a sort of Warriors thing as well, in that every group has a very defined look. But it means that there's quite a nice bit of visual variety. You aren't just looking at the same sort of stuff. I mean, again, there are riffs off the original. You know how in the original there's the Duke's car has got like the big chandeliers on it. There's a car with a disco ball on it this time. But it looks very nice, and it's very interesting actually that Kurt Russell wears like a big leather trench coat and like leather trousers in this, and this is like 3 years before The Matrix, and I was like, hang on, I'm sure this is before The Matrix, but it looks like they've just tried to, you know, rip that off. So that was very interesting. But no, actually, I mean, you know, John has a very simple style in how that he shoots things, but it's incredibly effective. And Escape from LA is no different. That being said, this is from the point in which shit CGI is very rampant, and thankfully Escape from LA hasn't aged too badly, because while there is some absolutely shocking CGI, some really bad sort of like CGI helicopters, overall the film doesn't look too bad. In that, you know, there's still quite a lot of the action sequences still have a very grounded, very practical element to them, even when there is sort of compositing going on. And even the surfing sequence looked better than I remembered it looking. I don't know whether this is because they've recolour graded it, but like there seemed to be a much better match-up between the elements than I remembered there being. Now, a huge part of any John Carpenter film is the score. This time he's working with Shirley Walker, and I must say, you know, Escape from New York is probably my favourite John Carpenter score, at least that he did, because I do love The Thing, but, you know, Morricone, all that. Anyway, so it's got quite a tough act to follow, especially when, you know, the film opens and you get a new rendition of the Escape from New York theme, which is so good, quite subdued, quite classy, as far as, you know, synth exploitation scores go. And whereas this version, you know, where the original's like ba 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 ba, the new one is like ba ba ba. It goes for it massively, and I'm very sorry for shouting. I'm sure that was horrible to listen to. The film score also plays massively into Western themes. You get a lot of guitar that sort of, especially early on, again, it's almost like the film forgets that it was going for this very Western vibe later on. There's some more sort of industrial notes to the synth work, and actually there's some pop scoring. I can't remember anything except for Tool, because I was like, what? There's Tool in this? But actually, it works very well. It's charming because it's from, you know, there's a lot of sort of nu metal type stuff in it, and because that is so not a thing anymore, it just adds to the charm of the film. And I mean, you know, if you're a sort of Carpenter purist, you might be like, whoa, what's going on here? But I actually quite enjoyed that aspect of it.
This town loves a winner.
So, I came out of Escape from LA this time a lot happier with it. It's not perfect, and it's not, you know, it's not as good as Escape from New York, but it's a lot of fun. Like I said, the action sequences still hold up pretty well. I think it's benefited from being from a time when CGI was just being used to sort of enhance action sequences rather than replace them. Sort of, again, similar to how stuff in The Matrix, I think, has aged better in the last sort of few years than it had 10 years ago. Because you don't see films like this anymore. And, you know, it's an action movie, sci-fi movie that is stupid, is pretty knowingly stupid, but still, without being sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink, its characters are sort of played straight enough that, you know, every other line isn't some sort of wisecrack. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Even the stupid, like the basketball sequence and the surfing sequence, they just it works so much more. And I think it helps that the film has never looked, you know, probably since it was in cinemas, it hasn't looked this good. Has really just made it. I mean, all of Carpenter's films seem to get better with age. They seem to be re-evaluated. I like, you know, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but I think the ending of this is fantastic, and, you know, is the perfect version of Snake's character that you get at the end of this. No, I just really liked it. You know, I was worried that I had spent far too much money on a 4K, but I would happily watch this again. I mean, you know, it's not dethroned Escape from New York at all, but it's just nice to be around Snake as a character. I'm really sad that we never got the planned Escape from Earth. I mean, perhaps we will. Perhaps that will happen. But no, it's fun. If you shut your brain off and just enjoy it as a dumb action film and don't expect it to be the sort of pinnacle of brilliant low-budget exploitation that Escape from New York is, you'll have a great time with it, because Carpenter knows what he's doing. And Kurt Russell's brilliant. It's got Pam Grier and Bruce Campbell in it. It's brilliant. Well, it's not brilliant. You know, this is not me trying to say that it's an iconic film in the same way, but it's a lot of fun. Don't take it too seriously. But that is just my opinion. What do you think of Escape from LA? Where do you rank it in all the John Carpenter films? Heck, do you like it more than New York? I can very much see why someone would. Let me know down in the comments. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos, and I shall see you next time.